doing, you'll find a way to make it better each
All right,
time. I'm gonna make $1 million. That's not.
Well, hello there, family. You're listening to Fired Up Freedom with Steve Ryan. Fired Up Freedom. All right. Do you ever look for certain services or products and it's just hard to find and you want to know if someone else has used that before? Well, visit my resources page, steveryan.com/resources, steveryan.com/resources. What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to Fired Up Freedom, formerly known as Fired Up Friday. That's right, folks. Fired Up Fridays is now Fired Up Freedom. Now, we're about to get into season 1, episode 8. And in this episode, I have a chance to have a nice conversation with my buddy, Robin Graybeat. Shout out to Robin. All right. So, Robin is this really cool artist. When I hear his music, this is just my opinion. I think of like this psychedelic, easy flowing, techno kind of smooth, just like, it's like this modern but retro vibe where it just escapes away. Just imagine escaping and just mentally going away. That's what comes to mind when I think of Graybeat's music. Graybeat is awesome. He's cool. He hails out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Really, really cool guy. Good at the studio program too, and he's pretty good. And we have a nice conversation. We talk about the process of how he does things, his thought process. We cover his music. We had a nice conversation. It definitely went a bit over an hour because you get caught up in the time and it just goes and goes and goes away. But it's a really good conversation, and I really enjoyed having it. And I'm gonna give a little commentary before we get into season 1, episode 7, 8. Am I off on the episodes? Let me double check because I done so many. 8, episode 8. That's right. Episode 8. I literally just said it. But sticking to who you are, being honest with who you are. When I think of Graybeat, that's a sentence that comes to my mind. I like how he is true to who he is. He's authentic to who he is. He's not trying to make himself or his music be like someone else. And I can relate to that because I've always been a person who beat at my own tune and my own drums, and sometimes it just don't seem that popular to go against the mainstream. Sometimes it hits off. So I've experienced both popular and unpopular. But you know what? The common denominator is yourself. And when you are grounded in who you are and you're honest about who you are and there's truth about who you are with yourself, for me, it gave me so much clarity. It was like a compass, like I was navigating, and there's this compass that came like this shining, beaming light that just led me through a dark forest. That's how I feel being honest with myself about who I am. And it's so clear. And let me tell you, when you're honest with yourself, and this has been my experience, get ready to lose people out of your life and get ready to attract your tribe. Your vibe will attract your tribe. I've seen it all happen, folks. I've seen it. I've seen people come, I've seen people go. And being honest with yourself, standing up for yourself, setting those boundaries for yourself, not being someone who's going to be with the word mat written over your head where you're like this rug mat and people just walk over and walk over. No, you got this. So I want to give you strength and send you light. Don't be afraid to be who you are. Don't be afraid to be honest with yourself about who you are. All right? I'll see you around. Welcome to the episode. Come on in. Come on in. Fired up freedom. Let it ride and ring. That's right. Fired Up Friday is now Fired Up Freedom.
Hey, 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 welcome to Fired Up Friday.
All
All right.
right.
We got Robin Sedivy, Mr. Graybeat in the house.
That's right.
How are you
So good.
today?
Oh, I'm doing excellent. So glad to be here. I love that your show is on a Friday. Definitely one of my favorite days, if not best day of the week.
So tell us a little bit about your music, about yourself.
Yeah, well, I more recently in the last 4 or 5 years got into music production, and so full-fledged music producer now, but I got my humble start as a drummer. And yeah, I played drums for a couple decades before delving into full production. Never really envisioned myself doing it, but it was something I discovered that I really enjoyed more than nearly anything.
Wow. And who were some of your influences as a drummer?
Boy, yeah, I got into you know, yeah, I started out kind of getting away from kind of the I don't know, the drum machine, style music that I kind of grew up with once I got behind a drum set at the tender age of about 13.
Oh
And
wow.
I started getting into some grunge rock because at that time, it was all about Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, you know. And so I learned all that stuff, but then really got into some classic rock after that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so the whole John Bonham, Keith Moon,
Mhm.
the whole Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Mitch Mitchell, and then right after that got heavily into jazz fusion. So got into Miles Davis, got into Tony Williams, who's probably my still highest esteemed drummer, and from there moved on to African music.
Wow. That makes sense why your music sounds very worldly. that
Definitely, yeah,
now that makes sense. That makes
yeah.
sense.
I actually owe just kind of the mindset needed, I think, to allow myself to get into production,
Mhm.
to really the kind of mindset I got into once I started getting into African music.
Oh wow. So what made you get into production? Like what was there a certain event or did you just stumble across it or
I stumbled across a simple MIDI controller made by Native Instruments, a Machina, and at the time hadn't been playing drums for a number of years. Had sort of gone on to other parts of my life for a few years and had more or less put down the drum set.
Mm.
But yeah, I actually found it as a way to sort of heal myself. I felt like I was missing something in my life, and that thing was music. The fact that a simple MIDI controller made it easy for me to get into music and just use a laptop that I had been previously using for web development, and yeah, I was able to connect the two pretty easily, and that allowed me to get into production. It's not that I wasn't really interested in production, maybe as a drummer. It's just that I don't know. I just never had the right equipment, maybe, or the time and space, or what was needed for everything to come together. So yeah, now I'm doubling down on learning everything I can.
Yeah, that makes sense. So all right, so there's two follow-up questions to this. One, so you're an artist as well too. But when
Yeah.
you produce, which definitely going to ask some questions about the artistry, is there a certain genre that you produce, or you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I oftentimes refer to my music as a mixture of, a uniquely innovative form of electronic music, inspired by, a massive attack style trip hop and sort of the emotional overtones of like Air and Moon Safari, and yeah, and sort of marrying those two influences, for sure. Although there are many others.
Okay. So on the producing and the artist side, you lean more toward the electronic, you would say.
Yeah, definitely. Given that I started out with a very simple setup and really no microphone, it meant that all my sounds came delivered to me in the form of virtual instruments or samples. And I found those really easy to work with, and they gave me a really wide variety of sounds I could work with. As a producer, when I put on my sort of producer hat, I'm really trying to scour, you know, what's available, get the best sounds out. And so, yeah, I really found that even though I was using virtual instruments and samples, that there was still a lot I could do with sound.
Mhm.
And yeah, I actually started to appreciate some other forms of music once I started getting into production. Not that I didn't appreciate these forms of music before, but I had a newfound appreciation. Whereas, I'll tell you what those forms of music are. But whereas I was a drummer who kind of went away from the drum machine sound in my own taste into more of a rock or jazz world sound, using organic instruments and really being honed into the drums and the drum player and what they're doing. When I moved on to production, then all of a sudden I had to look at the whole world of all the genres and start to appreciate parts of music, the world of music that I hadn't appreciated previously, because I now had new ways to appreciate them. And so hip hop, I really started getting into a lot more, and electronic musics of all tempos as well.
Wow. Yeah, I because when I hear your music, sometimes I think of the word psychedelic
Yeah,
funk.
definitely. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
all day long, it's like no matter what the other sounds are, it's like it's buried somewhere in there. So
Cool.
I
Well,
won't
I
say some things
definitely,
on air, but it makes you want to
yeah,
just relax.
nice. Well, good. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because it made me relax to make the music that you can hear that's out there
Yeah,
right now, and I think that that's cool that that came through, as the listener and as a producer to try to get that feeling across is, kind of the ultimate goal for me.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so like as a producer, like what's like the favorite part of being a producer that you like?
Yeah, other than everything, well, of course, I came from a performance background. I had certainly recorded my drum playing in the studio and composed many drum parts, and followed many arrangements and compositions, of others too. And so I had that experience of a performer. And so, at a certain level, I always valued the quality of the performance. Now, things changed a little bit when I became a producer because all of a sudden the performance was a very malleable thing. Using MIDI is how I started, right? So if I recorded a performance using a MIDI controller and kind of the touch sensitive drum pads and using my fingers to play. If there were any, mistakes, I could easily go in and correct them. And so all of a sudden, performance was something that I put on the back burner in a way, if that makes any sense. And I focused in on the skills I didn't have already developed with my previous background as a performer.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And so as an artist, you go by Graybeat. So we're curious to know, where did that name come from? What's the story on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my last name, Sedivy, is a Czech name from that region, and it just means gray, and I'm sure the pronunciation is a bit different. So the color gray, and I originally had I was going to start a web development company, and use the word gray. And when I connected the MIDI controller to that laptop I mentioned earlier, that part of this venture that I was undertaking was gone, and now it was a music department of my company, right? And so I had to think of another name, and I'm a drummer and I love beats, and I came up with the Graybeat. And since I code a little bit and I'm used to like camel case coding and things where you're smashing two words together but with uppercase word still, so it's cameled like two little humps. So I put the two words gray and beat as one with camel case, and I went with the spelling with an A of gray, mind you. And I researched and just I realized this was something that was still for me. Got it all trademarked, and off I went.
That's so Gray is like a translation of your last name.
Yeah.
And beat, it comes from because you love beats. You're a drummer. You just love the beat.
Exactly. Yeah. And it sort of did, I suppose, take on a new meaning. As I made my first EP, because the first EP ended up becoming about a space alien.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we know about like the gray space aliens, the Greys, right? They have that was the kind of like style of alien that Graylian was. So that's a little lesser of a meaning. It's not a super like multi-dimensional name. But a lot of my work actually does have a lot of dimensions of meaning.
Yeah, I would say so. So you have this picture that where it's your face, and it's like it almost looks like you're trying to break out of something. Like, what was the meaning behind that picture? Like, what was your message that you wanted to convey with that?
Is this the one with the little boxes?
Yeah.
So what that is a mosaic that I created using a tool that I found. And the idea that I had for this picture was originally actually to have an alien face. Okay. And have this mosaic with all of kind of different screenshots from my live performances, making up the face of the alien in the background. And fast forward a few different revisions, and you get the picture of me, which was actually from a photo that an esteemed photographer, Mike Madison, Bump Opera here in Minneapolis, took a year ago. So had that, and it ended up being perfect for this project. And I put it on the cover of my live album.
Oh wow. So are you ever going to revisit that alien idea with the pictures with the other? Because that sounds like that would have been awesome as well. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I realized that I might have gotten that idea from a video game art cover.
uh,
Yeah, because I had been playing this game a while back, and there was an alien. It was just an alien face with a mosaic, actually, I think. So it was like pixelated or something. So, you know, I'll have to double check it's not like already been done. You know what I mean? And better. But
right.
yeah, I'm actually leaving it pretty open ended as to what I'm gonna do with the whole alien thing. It's gonna continue for sure, but yeah, what happens is it's kind of a album by album sort of
Okay.
story, and so I have some ideas of what the third album here is going to be like for me, or at least the second full length album, but
Mhm.
the story doesn't usually come about, and therefore kind of the album cover till towards the end of making the album usually.
Yeah. Right. That's true. That's true. I find that to be a common process. Yeah. That's true. And so where did you get the name Wellstrom?
Yeah, Whalestrom. Yeah,
I may be
yeah,
saying it wrong.
that's a good question. Yeah, so the name of the title track for my first EP,
Mhm.
and it actually just describes the sound of that particular sound.
Mhm.
And it also ended up representing like a wormhole, like a swirling black vortex that like engulfs Grayley and transports Grayley into our dimension.
Uh,
Yeah. So on the album cover of that EP, it has like a little, I don't know, it's actually like almost like a candy cane looking little swirly vortex up in the corner.
mhm.
And yeah, that's the Whalestrom. That's the vortex. And also just the name of the song that sounds very swirly.
Yeah, I see it here. So, yeah, that's kind of cool. And so your fan club, your street team, they're the Grillians.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I actually signed up on your site, graybeat.com, and I was like, oh, I like his music. Let me sign up and be a Graylian. So that's kind of cool. You have your Facebook group, and what do
Yeah.
you do for like your community there for the
Cool.
Graylian?
Yeah. So the sign up page for this particular group is a little bit hidden, but it's actually at go.graybeat.com, and it's go.graybeat.com. And all it is online community. I share special behind the scenes content. It includes live streams. So I've been sharing a song I've been working on the last few weeks. It includes hanging out with people in the group who are all sorts of music lovers and even other music makers and artists. And it means actually exclusive merchandise and other sorts of benefits that you can't get anywhere else. So I wanted to do something special that I could use to really connect with people. I didn't know this was going to be it, but it's really been an awesome place for like everyone involved, and I know I've seen you in there, and, and yeah, you've been enjoying like the live stream I did here this last week. So
Yeah, yeah. You played some
yeah,
good song you was working on. It sounded pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so we've changed the thing on the screen to go.graybeat.com.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Because I do kind of have two different like websites. And the go.graybeat.com though is the only one where you can get all kind of the exclusive stuff.
Mhm.
And it's also the only way you can get into the private group.
All right. So if somebody don't know about it and they go on your website, I guess they're just going to miss out.
Right now. Yeah, at the moment.
That's kind of cool to have it exclusive in a way. It's almost like you only know if you're introduced some kind of way,
Definitely.
or if someone's
Definitely.
listening to the podcast or watching this live stream, they'll you can see go.graybeat.com, GRAYBEAT.com. That's kind of cool.
Exactly. Like I do throw it up there exactly when I'm doing my live streams and I'm kind of hanging out in places I know my fans kind of are going to be, that's the whole idea behind the group is that, I'm not just like, you know, um, putting a broadcast out like everywhere on the internet saying, "Hey, come join" for no reason. No, I've released a couple albums and stuff now. I'm doing some other stuff, a lot of live shows, kind of pioneered kind of a innovative live show, and honestly, there just kind of needed to be a way for me to connect with the people who are consuming all the stuff I've been doing out there, and yeah, so it's cool.
Do you ever look for certain services or products and it's just hard to find and you want to know if someone else has used that before? Well, visit my resources page, steveryan.com/resources, steveryan.com/resources.
Now you can feel free to not answer this question. You don't have to, but can't help but wonder. So, what's your takes on ETs? In
Yeah.
other worlds, and only if you want to answer
No, that's
it.
cool. I think it's fun to think about, like, for sure. It's funny because like it's not like a huge part of like who I am. I don't spend a lot of time, to be honest, like thinking about stuff that is, I guess, I don't know, you know, unproven, right? But like it is fun to get into that mode of thinking, right? And when I'm making music, I want to affect you, and like you said, it's a psychedelic, relaxing type of a experience. You know, I wanted to kind of put that fun into the music. Have a fictional story. But as it turns out, I mean, I do have a lot of thoughts on the subject, and I think you know, outer space might be one place where we could find intelligent life. You know, but I also think, there are different sort of parallel dimensions and, different sorts of other possibilities. There's just so much that we don't know about our surroundings.
Right.
There's a lot we do know as human beings. We have amazing capabilities. But we also have the capability to realize that there's something more that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's how we got to as where we are, and knowing all the things that we do, and able to experience all the things and even almost read people's minds sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I think everybody has, like that intuition to a degree.
Yeah.
It's just as how much we tune into it, and I think as artists, and you being an artist and a producer to some degree, you almost have to get people, you know, especially to put out the music that you're putting out because it's having the effect that you're intending to have. Yeah, and I noticed one thing that you mentioned. you said, making that kind of music relaxes you. So it's almost like this transference of energy in a sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of, and it's like this calm demeanor. Have you always been this calm? Like, is that just,
Yeah.
or did that take some work and, over time to get to that
Well, it took some work, certainly. I don't know. For some reason, the more I make music, the calmer I get. So,
point?
um, certainly a few more revolutions around the sun never hurt. But yeah, I think part of me healing through music and using production as a source of calm has a sort of benefits, and it it really feels good to know, for instance, that I'm doing what at least I feel like I was meant to be doing.
Right.
That's an undeniable sort of feeling that I have, and an energy that flows from me through the music. And it's, I always want to say, an amazing thing and almost incomprehensible that something that's previously been recorded and is played exactly the same every time, in other words, a song that's recorded, a record, the fact that it can have a transference of energy. But I do have some thoughts about that. I think certainly the speakers move sound, it moves the air
Mhm.
around you. So there really is a transference of energy there. Also, there are just so many intricate details involved with creating a record that I think, if done well and enough minute detail is paid attention, you really could potentially create something that someone would consider, quote, timeless. And
Yeah,
I think that's what a timeless record is that it has an amazing ability to transfer that intended energy.
that makes sense. Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
So, so I see you had like your EP, and then you have your two albums. Have you had like some other unreleased stuff, or not unreleased, but other like singles or anything, or?
Yeah, I have actually put out a couple of singles officially, and those were my first vocal productions.
Hmm.
My first two albums were, or first three, I guess, technically, including my live album. I can't forget that one.
Right.
Yeah, are all instrumental. They might have some vocal samples here and there, but what I did specifically for these last two singles is to, learn recording. Since I hadn't learned recording and I didn't have the microphone previously, what I did is got some equipment to record vocals, did some research, did some experiential learning and more research and more experimenting with attempting to record and so on and so forth. And yeah, eventually got to a point where I even had my wife sing backup vocal on
Hmm.
the first song. And yeah, then I even sent out a second vocal single here before the end of this last spring. There are some other unreleased items that are in the works, some of which I've shared exclusively at go.graybeat.com, but also, some that I've shared on a couple of sites. And one of them is Metapop, where they have the kind of contests, the production contests. I have an account there with a couple of tracks, and then I put those over on my SoundCloud as well. But the rest of it's more or less under wraps.
Okay. So it looks like a trend here has been release album every year. So, are we going to see one before 2021 is out, or?
I would
Oh no,
like
I
to say,
apologize.
no,
You
you're
you
good.
released live. Never mind.
I did
I
already
meant
this year.
2022. Sorry.
Oh, definitely. Definitely for 2022. Thanks. Yeah, no, that's fine. My ambitious part of my brain, I think, at one point thought that was a realistic possibility to do a second album this year, but 2022 is right in the wheelhouse for what is possible for sure, and what I'm shooting for, and that'll be no small event, you know. It'll really be a culmination of you know, just a lot of experiences, honestly, I've had in about the last year and moving forward. So I expect it to be definitely sort of a seminal Graybeat piece in, you know, Graybeat career here. You know, I really liked what I've been doing, and I think it, you know, holds up. But yeah, I just am only improving and growing, and the rate at which it's going at this point is very fast, and the quality of work is better than I would have expected. But I'm just kind of holding on to the reins with
Right.
both hands and shooting for that 2022.
Right. It's almost here. It's just, I mean, December, January is here before you know it.
Yeah, we're shooting for mid 2022. I think that'll be something that'll at least involve a little bit of self-care in the meantime, right? So yeah.
That makes sense. Have you already started working on any songs for that project, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm shooting to have about 12 songs,
Okay.
and most of those songs have already been started in one way or another. Now, I'm always leaving open the possibility that I might scratch one of the ongoing projects I have if something better fills that 12 slot. But I did a 6-song album, and 9-song album, and then a 9-song live album based on that previous album. So 12 seemed like a good goal, and a nice round mathematical progression, and something simple, not too ambitious, but also something. Since I seem to have a lot of different songs, I needed to have some space to have them all on the album, and then also, give me something to shoot for that is sort of a level up.
That makes sense. So, is there anything like any special meaning about the number
Mhm.
three?
Yeah,
A
no, this is a great question,
lot of threes
actually.
going on, you know.
Yeah, number three is sort of like, I feel like number three is, it's gonna have a lot of variety,
Mhm.
and I think one of the challenges is that it will have so much variety. But what I've kind of come to realize is that is going to also be one of the key parts of the character of this album, is that there is this sort of variety, right?
Mhm.
And who doesn't like variety? Who doesn't like a variety show? I
Right.
don't know, maybe some people. But I guess my point is that variety is the spice of life. No, I'm not going to say that. Variety is fun. And I have so many different aspects of what I'm doing now that I want to share, that it'll be hard for me to just do one sort of genre
Mhm.
in this album. There's going to be a number of upbeat songs, and a lot of them will have an organic feel. Most of them, maybe half, will have vocals.
Mhm.
And I think what'll happen is that you'll see kind of different parts of me come out that you haven't seen previously, and I think that that's the character of this album. it's sort of me coming into my own as a producer,
Mm.
and yeah, expressing everything I've learned every step along the way. And the fun thing is there's going to be, a little bit more collaboration this time, and that'll be part of the special spice that will give it that variety. Since, it'll be a few songs that involve people playing different instruments that I'll have collaborated with, and that'll be new for a Graybeat album.
Oh, that's gonna be nice. So not trying to get too far ahead. So is the album in 2023 going to be a 15 song album?
With the way things are going these days, and kind of the length of the album increasing by quite a bit, if you notice, with
Yeah.
some artists coming out with albums that would fit on probably only 3 CDs back in the day and just putting them up on Spotify as one album. I started to see that trend. So who knows? Hopefully not 150.
Right. Well, one thing that can happen is go up by three and then at some point go down by three and then take it back up by three, I guess. You
See,
know?
I like throwing a little unpredictability. It's kind of like the you get the chance to call the play, right? As the coach, it's my coach hat. I get to kind of play with my audience, so
Have them speculating. So, because it might be
exactly.
11 or 13 or 14.
I'm thinking possibly a prime number, or possibly not even an integer.
Wow. I wonder what about half? Like have half a song.
Exactly. Now you got me the wheels spinning here. We're gonna have to figure out a way to make that happen.
I don't even know if there's any songs on anywhere that has like the halves. I don't know if I've seen it. It may exist. Who knows?
I think anytime that the song exists, it's either a full song, or if it doesn't exist, it's not. So it has to be somewhere between existing and not existing, if that makes any sense.
And finding a way to record it in that state.
Maybe that's the key,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Who knows how this is going to go, And are you into like art or anything? I thought I saw some designs or something when I was looking on your site. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so I do some graphic art.
okay.
And what I've done is it's creative coding. So I've kind of used the power of some kind of cutting edge software we have at our disposal to create real time graphics that sync up with real time live audio remixes that I do. And so I've coded some special graphics that are never the same twice, since I always I created songs that are never the same twice, and then I've linked the two through code. So I do that, and that is definitely a form of visual art. But at the same time, I also have more than a couple album covers. So kind of very creative photos of myself as well that have some other artists have done.
Oh, wow.
And one of them in particular for Elemental Rhapsody was it's a very serious work of art. The amount of labor, honestly, that went into that cover art is incredible, and something I will share in detail eventually here on with the Graylians. But there's a lot of meanings that go into the songs and also the cover art for that album. And since it's a very intense work of art, it it has very fine detail. So even though you almost need like a whole wall to see all the detail to make this art really huge, so you can actually see everything that's going on in it. but it also tells the story of the album, which is an amazing kind of thing to have happen with such a detailed work of art and such a complicated album that has many dimensions of meaning embedded into each song. And so, yeah, that's kind of the main piece of art right now that I think kind of represents Graybeat, other than the logo.
Right.
And yeah, so fortunately, I actually have to credit my father because he's the artist behind a lot of this, including the Whalestrom EP we collaborated on. I drew a pencil sketch and he did the rest. And he spent well over a month working just diligently on the Elemental Rhapsody cover art. We sort of collaborated on that, although I didn't have a hand in it. We spoke and went back and forth a lot to kind of comprise the composition of the art and have it represent different things to match the album. And what else? Yeah, and there's some different singles and things, and I've done some artwork for those based on that original artwork. So I have a little bit of a knack for it, certainly, but yeah, I can't take full credit for sure, any stretch of the imagination, for a lot of the cool art that kind of resides in the Graybeat world.
Oh wow. Have your father, does he draw too, or is it mostly just the graphics, like electronically?
Yeah, he really does a wide variety of art. In fact, certainly drawing, certainly the computer graphics, I believe, which involves some drawing
Hmm.
and digital drawing as well as by hand, and kind of
Wow.
combining the two. Yeah, and then from there, really, actually full installations, art installations, which are these enormous signs and different sorts of structures that he builds for other people. And he also does gold leaf. He's one of the best gold leaf artists in the region, and he actually does a lot of that for antique woodwork and restoration of antique boats. So, yeah, he's the visual guy, but he's got a great taste in music too, which he's got a large role to play in the existence of Graybeat, certainly.
Oh wow. Does do you guys listen to pretty much like similar? You have similar taste in music, or?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. I grew up partially on his record collection, his vinyl collection, as we call it now, and listening to just you know hundreds of records that were lying around, and well, they were neatly stowed away, but there were just so many to go through, and yeah, so that's how I got into a lot of classic rock, for example,
Hmm.
was actually listening to these original vinyl records on a turntable, a receiver, and speaker setup from the 1970s,
Oh wow.
which honestly sounded really cool. And so, yeah, that was a great way, to get into a lot of the music that I love, was through his record collection. And yeah, just seeing that, yeah, I kind of, as a musician myself, found that our taste started to align more at that point once I started playing drums and learning
Okay.
a lot more history of music. And yeah, yeah.
That makes sense. So it appears that you like to leave your audience guessing, because I noticed on especially the second album, you have "To Be Continued" as the last song. I just noticed a lot
Yeah,
of things like that with your work. So do
it's
you just
true.
always like to keep them guessing, or?
In a way, you know, because why not? I think it doesn't it inspire imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come and tap into the world of the Freedom Community. Do you love having conversations with other like-minded people? Then the Freedom Family Community is great for you. Visit steveryan.com today.
And what is Zool? That was the
Zool,
first song on your first
the
album.
first album, yeah, you got it. Zool is the home planet of Graylien,
Okay.
and the planet that Graylien leaves um, on a journey really with no sort of goal. Sort of a journey that just kind of blindly was following a calling from a distant land, and so it also kind of represents my transition over into producing music. Zool is also the first song that I really arranged for the album.
Okay.
And maybe one of my first, it's definitely one of my first compositions, possibly the earliest one on that album.
Okay.
And
That makes
so, yeah, it fit in nicely with this kind of what I was going through. And it's, yeah, but it's the home planet, kind of the thing that I was leaving behind, or Graylien was leaving behind.
Oh wow. So now it all ties in. You have the home planet, and then I know it's a song named Graylians on there, and then it goes all the way to be continued. like like what's the rest of the story?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Um, yeah, you know, and to think like I never expected the album to even have a story to begin with.
Right.
Um,
How did that
you know,
develop?
I had a lot of faith that it would be continued.
Yeah. How would you say that your story, developed as you were putting the songs together?
It was a back and forth conversation sort of that would go on in my mind, you know. Um, you know, once I knew I wanted to create an album, even if I didn't know why I wanted to create an album, I guess I felt like it was the best way to share what I was doing
Okay.
and what I love to do. But once I knew that there'd have to be a certain number of songs combined together, and they would have to have an order. And I sort of didn't. I knew I wouldn't have like vocals, to tell a story, right? I wouldn't have a way inside the music to tell the story other than the instruments.
Mm.
So when the idea came to me that what I was making could tell a story, it sort of made me a cinematic flair that was going on. It was sort of me learning how to really tell a story, literally with a song, and choosing which instruments to highlight and what sort of melodies to create, what sort of timbres to work with. It was sort of like, I guess I was telling a story through these instruments. And so when it came to me that I could create a story around it, then when I would sit down to make the music, all of a sudden I'd realize that there could be this additional layer to sort of have baked in to what I was creating.
Oh, okay.
And so I'd be creating, so as I was creating the music, I would come up with parts of the story. As I was not creating the music, and sort of like leaving the music behind, and going on and doing other things and kind of getting my mind off of it, then other parts of the story will kind of show up too. And so it was a real back and forth thing where it was an introspection, but it also was an additional layer of expression that I could add to my art.
Wow. Okay. That's very detailed. So it seems like you put a lot of thought into how you're doing your songs, how you're presenting your songs to the world. And when I hear some of your songs, like just the instrumentation, it's a lot of details in that. And there's probably because musicians ear, there
Yeah.
it seems to be a lot of subconscious tones too, like tones that you put in there, but maybe it's turned down to a certain frequency to where it's not obviously audible. But so
Absolutely.
so are those like intentional, or do you just kind of come across it and you keep it, or a combination of both?
What happens a lot of times is that, so my overarching goal when I sit down is like I want to transfer that emotion, transfer that energy to the listener.
Okay.
And so, yeah, what happens? Say the question again. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So basically, like the music that you have buried in the music,
Yeah, yeah. So,
yeah,
yep.
that.
Thanks. Yep. My train of thought escaped me there. But it's a complicated thought. So, yeah, as I would create the music, I was trying to transfer that emotion, but I was also, of course, trying to create something that was enjoyable to listen to. And since it was a record, something that's enjoyable to listen to again and again.
Right.
And what would happen is I would come up with different ideas for parts to the song, different instruments. I find a cool sound, come up with a cool composition of the part. And maybe after a while, like I would honestly maybe tire of that part of the composition, because as I'm working on the song and hearing it more and more, I will get tired of it. And I don't want there to be a tiresome aspect to listening to the song. So what I might do is take it out, or a lot of times what I'll do is I'll still like that part, but at a very low volume. And I'll sort of tuck it in as a sort of a textural element to the song. And basically do something where you're creating a very rich texture for your song. You're trying to sort of tell the story still, and bringing out the main parts of your composition to the listener. Those are the ones that hit their ear the loudest, those things that tell the story. And then tucking back just that textural part of the story. And so as the story is told, the story, what it is on its face, but you also have kind of a rich backdrop to this story.
Fired Up Friday is now Fired Up Freedom.
Running from myself at times, I can't describe the words I try.